guys, today we've got ourselves a quad comparison, another quad versus video. We've done one before where we compared an old Warrior with a new Warrior. We still have the newer Warrior. I mean, they're all old, but today we're going to be comparing Cameron's Kawasaki KFX 400 that you guys have seen a really short video on maybe, and the Warrior, which we've had a ton of videos on the channel. We've done a lot of work to this. This is a 98 and yours is a 2003, correct, Cameron? So this is a 03. This is like an early generation KFX. So just gonna get this out of the way. This also applies to Suzuki LTZ 400 quad racer, they also call it. So the LTZ 400 is the exact same thing as this KFX 400. I think it says it on the frame even. Yeah, we'll show it in a bit, but it says it on the frame, manufactured by Suzuki Motor Company. So if you guys are watching this video, also realize that this all applies to LTZ 400s, and then I think the DX 400 Arctic Cats are the same thing. They have maybe a couple of differences actually as far as like plastics and stuff, but they're basically the same quad. So we're going to be comparing and contrasting these guys today. So we're just going to get right into, I guess, cosmetics, because that's the first thing, surface level stuff. So if you want to come over here, Cameron, we're going to take a look at the Warrior. So you guys probably seen the Warrior on the channel before, and if you guys don't know, Warrior has kind of like two main generations. Like the early ones have these square headlights, and they have a little bit kind of different nose plastics and a different front end bit. And there's Cameron had one of those, red one. I prefer the look of these ones. This one's a 98, and I think this started in 92 or something. With this round headlight, Yamaha double headlight. These are made, or they're like branded as Yamaha on there. It's pretty cool. So this one's pretty clean, as you guys can see. It has the original graphics and everything, and this also has a nice aftermarket seat cover. Some of them just have like ratty seat covers and stuff, but yeah, this one's pretty clean. It's not like super perfect. The pipe's a little rusty. You guys can see down there, frame's a little rusty, control arms and stuff, but this one's in pretty good cosmetic shape. I like the white and blue a lot. This is probably just my favorite. I've looked at a lot of like different Warriors, and this is probably my favorite one actually. It's the one I have. And then as far as the Kawasaki, this thing, the plastics just kind of like get beat up more, I guess. I don't know what it is. They're just super faded. If you come around back, they're kind of whitened out and everything. I think that's just from like fender maybe rolling and stuff. You can see like where it's bending and fading and stuff. But this is a 3-piece plastic. There's a middle gas tank shroud and stuff, and then there's this front piece. Well, I mean, there's more pieces because there's also these black pieces, and then you have this big rear bit, which I'll show you guys taking that off. How do you take this off, Cameron?
It's down on the side.
On the side. Oh, well, this is for the seat. I guess we'll just show you what's under the seat. So under the seat for the Kawasaki, just the air box, and this is what it looks like under there. This leaf out of there. So this seat, I will say, is a little bit wider in the base. You can see kind of comes down to a point. I think they're both equally comfortable, to be honest with you. I think they're both, huh? Oh. I don't know, this isn't my quad, so. How the fuck does this thing go on there?
Just leave it.
Yeah, we'll just mess with the seat. We don't need a seat when we're riding anyways. Cameron's always like standing up and stuff. No, but under the seat for the Warrior, we'll look at this one. The previous owner drilled out holes in the airbox, so I don't really like that because they took it to the dunes actually. Like we got this from them, but they already had done that, and then they actually borrowed it one time and took it to the dunes, and then it was just full of sand and crap and kind of ruined it. But yeah, basically the same under here. Very similar quads, but talking about also, we'll just get into like the frame architecture and the modern. Oh my gosh, I did it to my own quad like terribly. There we go. So these things came out in the late 80s, these Yamahas, and then these came out in the early 2000s. So really, even though this is a 98 and this is a 2003, so only 5 years separate them, this is basically an 80s quad, and this is an early 2000s quad when you're riding them as far as technology. Because when it comes to the Kawasaki, you have a 400cc. This is a DRZ motor out of like a Suzuki DRZ. They basically shoved it in these quads and the LTZ and everything. So this is a 400cc water-cooled motor. So you have a radiator up here. You can see the fan and everything. So it's kind of a little bit more complicated, where this is just a 350cc air-cooled, a little bit simpler thing. So this is kind of, it's just older, simpler, and whatnot, which makes it a little bit easier to work on, but we'll talk about working on it in a bit. But the KFX is definitely a lot more powerful. I don't have the exact power number. I know but it's, I think, at least 10 more horsepower than that thing, even though it's only 50 cc's higher. And I think this is a 5-speed, right, Cameron? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So this is a 5-speed, but the Warrior is a 6-speed, but you don't really need the 6-speed in there in the Warrior. I don't ever use it. But as far as like the engines, that's the biggest difference between the two quads, to be honest, is the fact that you have this water-cooled thing versus the air-cooled thing. This guy's a little bit heavier because of that, but it's just way higher performance engine. And then when it comes to the track width and whatnot, if you come around the back of this guy, it's kind of hard to tell when you're not looking at them like super side by side, but the KFX or LTZ is a bit wider. It's a more modern quad. The kind of sits lower in the front actually, because this guy has a little bit more pizza cuttery tires and sits higher a little bit. And I think just, yeah, the track width in the front actually is pretty close, but the rear axle is a couple inches wider for the LTZ, so, or the KFX. So as far as riding them goes, the KFX, like I said, way faster, way more peppy. The controls are way lighter. The throttle and everything is just snappier. The thumb throttle. Okay, yeah, whatever. It's not on there, but the thumb throttle is super snappy compared to the Yamaha. Yeah, there we go. And this is the brake levers, like shorter travel. The clutch, though, the big thing is the clutch is super light on this one. This one kind of feels like crap. I'm not gonna lie. Needs to be maybe adjusted. That one is also a bit old in the clutch, but the clutch is super heavy and long. It's not super heavy, it's long. It's really long on the Warrior, and the thumb throttle and everything. So the controls are just nicer on this thing, I'm not gonna lie. Super similar control setup though. You'll have the exact same like brake reservoir on the same side, and then you have the high-low lights, same thing. Like the kill switch and whatnot, everything is same spot. So this one though does have these warning lights. You guys can see you have the reverse light. That one has a reverse light, we'll show you, and then the neutral light is right there, and then this one actually has a temp light because that's set up with the fact that it has radiator and it's water cooled. This is how you do the reverse. Both of these have reverse, which is really nice, I'm not gonna lie. And this is how don't you put this in neutral and you twist this, right?
You go to first, and then you twist, and then while it's twisted, you click down.
Okay, so that's how you do it on this one. But the Warrior, if you want to show,
the Warrior can do it in any gear.
The Warrior, I like to do it in neutral just because it's like kind of makes me feel safe as far as what I'm going to do. So we can show the function later and everything, but this is basically just the reverse lever. You just go burn and then you pop it back and it'll kind of click down. This will engage, and then the reverse light here, you can show them here. The reverse light will pop on, this red guy. So they both have reverse. They're very similar in capabilities and whatnot, but as far as how they ride, like I said, the KFX is so much faster and everything, and the suspension I think is a little bit longer travel, to be honest with you. If you look at the shock length, they're like way longer than these little shocks, and they're quite a bit beefier. I will say this thing rides pretty good though. I think this one might have aftermarket shocks and these like shockware covers on there as well. But the KFX front end is super lightweight, and that's the biggest thing, or LTZ, same thing. So when you're going up a hill, if you're riding really steep hills and whatnot, we took these to a local or OHV park, Jones Creek. It's in Washougal, Washington. And basically there's a lot of steep hills there where they have to basically implant cinder blocks on the slope, on the gradient, to like avoid erosion, because there's a lot of quads riding there and bikes and stuff, or else just tear the hill apart and you just ruin all these trails. So there's all these cinder block, like super steep. It's like as steep as a stairwell. You're driving up a stairwell basically. And this thing with the front end, Cameron said it was going to tip backwards several times. And I remember there was a couple times where the wheels would start to lift off the ground and he would have to lunge forward. And so you got to use your body weight a lot and lean forward when you're going up on inclines on this thing. Also, that makes it really easy to do wheelies. We'll show later. Cameron will do some wheelies on it or whatever. Whereas this thing kind of is like a tractor when you drive it, which is a good and a bad thing, because it's tractor in the sense that it's slower, but at the same time it kind of crawls. It almost has a sensation when I was going up those hills, because I was worried I was going to get a same thing with him. He would be in front of me and I could see that he would be struggling to get grip on the front wheels and put them down, because when the front end is so light like that and you're turning, they're just not doing anything because they're just not on the ground really. Whereas this thing, like, I don't know, it just crawled up. It almost felt like a 4x4 vehicle, even though it's not all-wheel drive at all. It just would crawl up the hill. I don't know what it is. Weight distribution, I think the motor, you can tell the motor is just farther up in the frame, closer to the front wheels, I would say, probably by a couple inches, but not super significant. But something about the way the frame geometry is and everything, this thing just, I don't know. I think also probably has to do with the power delivery and everything. This bitch being more powerful, that makes it way easier to do wheelies and wants to lift that front end up pretty easily. On asphalt, it's like you can feel the quad kind of like rake back. We can look at the rear ends real quick, and we'll talk about what. So this one we've actually replaced the rear end, but that was because it was just super old. It's shattered and everything. So this is actually a new axle. You can see it's kind of pretty shiny. This is only a couple years old. We did videos. This is a new carrier as well. Both have rear disc brake. Both have this on the same side and the chain on the same side and everything. This one has a big skid plate thing, but you can see it's much more minimal in the back with this carrier setup. And the chain tensioners are down here on the bottom, and they're pretty easy to adjust and everything. Whereas this guy has this like kind of case carrier, and there's basically an issue with these are the chain tensioners to lengthen or shorten where the axle is.
If you look, you can see that bar right there is supposed to be parallel with this box, and because there's torque on this, it pulls it forward.
Yeah, and you can see this little slot. That's where these move in and out. So this is basically an issue with these early LTZs. I'm pretty sure the later ones have a nicer design, and they were updated, like the engineering was updated, so they don't have the issue quite as bad. But basically what will happen is the axle will actually be slightly out of alignment, and it's not good for the carrier, it's not good for the chain and everything. So I think that's a thing that people do, is they'll swap a second gen like rear end onto an early quad to avoid the issue. So that's just one thing to point out. If you just watch it, you know, and catch it and just keep adjusting your chain and make sure things are tight, you're not going to like destroy the quad. It's not going to like screw the motor up or anything. That's the most valuable part of this guy. So that's one thing to look out for. As far as the Warrior, I don't really know like major we had to replace the carburetor, but that's just like that was not the quad's fault. That's the carburetor's fault. That's a manufactured by somebody else. It's manufactured by Mikuni. This is also not the stock exhaust. I'd like to know this is a Super Trap, old 90s pipe, and then this is also a stock exhaust, but it's just like the baffle's like messed up in the back, so it's kind of a little bit louder. We'll show you guys what they sound like as well. I don't really think there's much to talk about as far as the riding. Like I said, this one slower, clunkier, I would say. Torque is plenty, but really top speed is not there with the 350 air cooled, and whereas this thing is just like kind of rocket ship compared to this. I mean, I know that new like 450 race quads and stuff will just smoke this too, and there's like all these big like 700cc quads out there like Raptors and stuff. But as far as, you know, straight line speed, KFX easily wins. I would definitely say if you're doing trail riding and like bopping around in the woods and stuff, this is definitely the machine for that as far as like doing incline stuff. Also, ridden this through like kind of swampier stuff, and because of the narrower track width, I think it's a little easier to place on the trail if you have like, okay, I'm going to take a line here, whereas this is a little bit bigger and wider and just has a larger footprint. This has the big Nerf bars. These are aftermarket also, so that kind of makes it feel bigger when it's really not.
Yeah, the KFX is a lot better for like the dunes,
Yeah.
high speed and straight lines and lower to the ground stuff, where this one's way better for the trails and steep hills and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, and then these are both, I would say, pretty budget quads, so that's kind of why we're comparing them. They're not super far off in price, so that's what I'll talk about next. So with the Warrior, well, I'm just going to be frank, it's the cheaper of the two, is the reality. It's older, it's not as fast and whatnot, and I think just in most ways that's a better machine as far as like performance and everything. But you can find these Warriors for as cheap as like $1,500 running with like a clean title if you really look. Sometimes it's like broken or whatever. You can find these things that are really $1,000 or like $1,200 or something. You might not have a title then, but you can get lucky sometimes. Cameron, when he had his Warrior, he got it for like $1,250 with a title, and it was kind of mostly working. It had been finagled with quite a bit as far as the wiring, so that's not perfect. But these things, they'll run up. I saw a couple for over $3,500 that were super minty Warriors, like 2002s and stuff, like final model years. I think they ended in 2004 if I'm correct, with the Warrior. But so they'll get up there to like prices of these LTZs and KFXs. But the thing about these ones, if you only have $2,000, you're probably not gonna be able to find one of these for running. Cameron got his for $2,300 with a clean title, but it's not a perfect example. I will say, like, cosmetically, it's kind of rough around the edges and stuff, but it works good mechanically. But I saw one, the cheapest one I saw last night, that wasn't like wrecked or like some like major engine failure, was one that wasn't running and didn't have a title, and it was $2,300 as well. Whereas a lot of these still are running over $3,000. So if you spend $3,000 Warrior, you're gonna get like the most perfect one, whereas you're probably just gonna get like a nice one of these. But so I'd say most of these land from like 3 to like 3,800, and these can be like 18 to 2,400. I would say it's kind of like the sweet spot as far as what you're gonna find. So price is definitely goes to the Yamaha. And then as far as parts availability, these things are way bigger platform because they're across multiple brands. Oh yeah, and we'll show you the Suzuki thing. If you guys didn't know, this is literally says Suzuki Motor Corporation manufactured by. So you can buy a bunch of Suzuki parts and put this on here. I mean, they're all the same parts. So when you go looking for it, it's gonna be all the same part number and everything. But this is a way bigger platform, and these are way more popular. When you go and look for them, there's so many more LTZs and KFXs and stuff on Marketplace or Craigslist than Warriors. There's still a decent amount of Warriors, and there's definitely part availability. You can basically get whatever you need, but if you need like plastics and stuff, I would say this is so much easier to find it for these ones. And just general parts availability, like I said, is so much more available. If you're like maybe trying to find one that you want to buy parts from a part out or whatever, you're probably going to find that easier than the Warrior. But the Warrior without the radiator system and just doesn't have like the sensor for the coolant and like just a little bit simpler in general, I would say it's definitely easier to work on. We've been able to work on this like many times, super easy to work on. Another thing to note is the Cameron pointed out, this one has a shift linkage like set thing, so you can see where this, I think this motor was also in the Big Bear or whatever. So the 350, same thing. So it's kind of like the utility quad version. I don't think there's a 400 utility quad that they put in, but obviously this came from a motorcycle, so it's already in something else. But yeah, I don't know. I would say if you told me, you know, like for the same price, you're gonna pick one, I think you just pick this one just because it's newer, it's just so much faster and feels more refined as far as everything. But I think as a budget shopper and someone who also likes the look of the Warrior, I would pick the Warrior again if it were me and with my own money, because I could probably save like $1,000 and find like a pretty equal example. So we're probably gonna show you guys a little bit of riding and then kind of like wrap up the video maybe with a couple more words. Okay, so you guys just saw him take a little bit of a ride on each one. Not a lot of riding, obviously, like he was trying to do a good donut. He got one good donut with it where it's not very, last time we were here it was kind of muddy and it was way easier to do donuts and whatnot. So you saw the Kawasaki was just easier to wheelie. He only like tried once with the Warrior, but just the weight distribution and the power is just a lot easier with this guy. But another thing he brought up when he just rode a back-to-back like that, the Warrior bars, he said, were kind of farther out, which I don't know. I guess you kind of end up sitting farther back on the machine, kind of over the rear axle on this one, whereas I think you're a little bit in front of the axle. Let me see. Oh yeah, you're definitely a little bit forward on this one. The cockpit feels a little tighter, even though it's actually a bigger machine. And if you notice, when he was riding those back to back, you could see the Yamaha is just kind of a little bit smaller footprint. So I would say for a younger rider, maybe a smaller person, this is probably gonna fit them, or if you're like, I guess a girl is usually smaller, you could probably have them ride this, or whoever likes it really. But I would say this is a little bit more friendly for a newer rider as far as like controlling the power and everything, whereas this is a nice big full-size quad. Once again, these are not like 450 race quads. They're not top of the food chain at all. But I guess last thing is, I guess maybe you guys could comment down below which one you got like more, maybe what you have. I'm guessing probably more people have the LTZ than the Warriors, as they're a little bit older, and some people say that these are just total like tanks, like as far as in a bad way, like, oh, they're just slow and fat or whatever, which I kind of agree, but I have a lot of fun on the thing, and this one's still super fun, so I like them both. But yeah, check out our other quad comparison videos. We have videos actually riding in the woods. We just don't have our helmet cam set up today with us, so please like and subscribe and check out our other videos. Thanks.